role of men in all this, the role of women in all this. How do we begin to make these changes? So I'm going to just ask everyone, let's be open. We're not here to judge anyone. We're here to hear issues and the challenges we have and how we can work together as a community, society, to begin to make some of these changes that we desperately need to change. So, and let me start off with your advocacy work in this space, women. You're the founder and president of Purple Women Foundation, and I was fortunate to be a part of that and know the work that you're doing and how that started and what you have been doing so far. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, and then we can go into some of the planned matches around the country and why we are doing that. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Well, like Sis said, my name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. I am first and foremost a journalist. I'm a broadcast journalist, and I am the founder of Purple Women Foundation. Sis is always calling me president. I just see myself as founder. All the women there, presidents. Yes, we started off. It was something not, very much within just one of those things that I do, which started off from NSARS. So the NSARS protesters had started, 3 days. I was watching them as somebody who is obsessed with the news and constantly obsessed with the news. I was watching them, and by day 3, I'd said to myself, if they get to day 3, I will go and join them. That means they are serious. So of course that's what happened, and then I sent a message out because we're talking about women. Incidentally, one of the things that came to my head was, I know many women would like to be a part of this, but a lot of them would be afraid to come out. The vast majority of Nigerian women have not taken part in demonstrations or that sort of stuff. Of course, when you go back to our history, military history, who can blame them? So those who have taken part only took part when they were in university, and they're mothers today, and some are even grandmothers today. So it occurred to me that, and for somebody like me, was always in that space anyway, way back from, when I was in England, when I was growing up in England, I sent a message to a few friends, female friends, and I said, look, I'm going out to protest. If you want to come with me, let me know. Let's meet at City of David Church, because it was close to my house. And of course, it was close to the toll gate. Let's meet at City of David Church, and, we'll all go together, and I will be there. That's what I thought. And I think that first day, there must have been, I don't know, about 20 something, maybe 30 women. And I'd said to them, I created a WhatsApp. I hadn't even created the WhatsApp then at that time, but I did say, those who got in touch with me, look, get the kids involved, get them to create a placard, because this is about the next generation. It's an opportunity for you to have a conversation with them and tell them what's going on in the country. So that's what we did. Now, I then created a WhatsApp group only because of security and safety reasons. So I said, when we get there, if you get lost, put a message on the group. I will come and find you. This is my area. And, nothing bad happened at all. We got there. The women had a fabulous time. We had our placards. We walked to the protesters, with the young protesters. It was great. Some of us even got on the motorbike. It was just, the atmosphere was just electric. We walked with them. We marched with them up and down, all the way down to Zumba, came back down from Bonnie Camp and stuff. And then we stepped with them at the toll gate, which is what they were doing at that point, before the toll gate came really, really packed. And then, so by that evening, I got home, and that WhatsApp group had grown, sis, as you know, and it just grown exponentially. But then the other thing that occurred to me was that this was not our fight, but it was our responsibility to enable, our responsibility to give these kids the strength, the support, the inspiration to keep going. And since you remember, that's when we started to raise money, you know, and we just basically put a call around and we started to raise money, and people were giving us money, and we then divided ourselves into those on the mainland, those on the island, those in the east, those in the south. I mean, literally, we were massive. We had a waiting list. You remember, sis, we had a waiting list because back then WhatsApp didn't allow, I don't know, whatever 200 and something was the maximum. And yeah, you know, we just took it. Literally, we're doing shifts. So we would do morning shift and afternoon shift. And what did we do during those shifts? We would basically set up our table and our tent to give them drinks, to give them food, so they would keep going. Because as aunties, as the older generation, that was our job. They were now carrying on where we had left off. And this Nigeria, the next Nigeria, was going to be theirs. But of course, we finished all of that, and then NSAS ended, and then we were called Women for Nigerian Youths, remember? And NSAS, we came to the end of NSAS. I won't go into what happened that day because of time, but do ask me, sis, if you want me to tell them what happened to us and why that video came out as Purple Women. So anyway, I was going to close the group. I said, right, ladies, we're done. Everything's fine. The protest is over. So it's like, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe later. And it was incredible because they said, no, you can't close. And I always remember the sister that wrote me and said to me, you don't know what you've done. You have no idea what you've awoken in me. All my life, my husband said I couldn't. My husband's family said I couldn't. My parents told me I couldn't. They all said I couldn't take part in what was going on in the country, that I didn't belong in that political space, or they even said I wasn't educated enough. And here we were. I am a part of a group that supported and stuff. And she literally could not believe it. I said, I don't want to stop. I do not want to stop. A fire has, you know, has lit me, and I want it to continue. And when she sent me that message, she made me cry. I called her and I said, okay, you women wanted to open. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll stay open, but in order for us to be effective, we need to register formally, etc., which is what we then did. And the name Purple Women Foundation was born. But I must always say, we didn't pick the color purple. I didn't pick the color purple, which Sis is wearing. If I had known she was doing that, I would have worn purple too. I didn't pick the color purple out of the blue, not because it's even my favorite color or anything. Purple, I had to explain, purple is the color of royalty. Women gave birth to royalty, both male and female royalty. That's number one. Number two is the sense that purple has always been the color of women's activism and suffrage and revolutionary, maybe more so in the West, but that was always the color. So that's how I came up with the color purple, and that's why we're called Purple Women Foundation. And finally, Sis, you might have forgotten this. Incidentally, we did not know whilst we were doing the women's protest yesterday at Alausa. Incidentally, exactly a year ago yesterday, we were doing exactly, we didn't know till Titila, but we did exactly the same thing for Chilma. We went to protest at his factory, at a Risco factory, for Chilma to be released from detention exactly a year to the day. So it just goes to show the universe somehow always has a way of balancing these things. But as long as you're coming from it from a place of good, which our Purple Women, we're not rich, we don't get donor money, we self-fund. Now we even pay 5K a month, and not everybody can pay that 5K a month. So we often have to reach out to people when we need friends and family, when we need to do these outreaches, you know. And just like when we did it in NSAS, and I remembered my house, there was a baker who called me. I wished I had saved his name. He said, I don't know you, madam, but I hear you're Ireti Bakare. You're doing these things. I'm sending you bread. My house my living room is massive.
I
was full of
remember.
bread. Remember, you remember? And I'm thinking, where am I going to put all the bread? We can't get to the other side of town and everything. So yes, that's what we've done. And Purple Women continues to go strong.
Thank you. And the reason I asked you for that was just to show what an initiative from one person can do and how often we feel powerless to effect changes. So that's why I asked you that question. And then to also see the women on the platform from all walks of life, all different, diverse educational background, qualification, just coming together for a common cause. It has really been inspiring, and so that's why I wanted you to share that. And Purple Women has moved on. You talked about trauma. It's not just trauma, but there's also supporting. There was
Absolutely.
that young lady that was on the bus that
Yes.
was murdered. That
Yes.
I remember you went and the group
We
of
all
women
went.
went to
We all
visit.
went. We took
Yes,
2
and those that
buses.
couldn't
Yes.
make it send something. So these I'm using that just to lay context as to how we got here, and also to empower everyone to rise up
Badishi,
and do what they can do. I owe my dues. I owe my Purple Women dues, but I still use purple hats till today. And I think that's something else that we all kind of that becomes a common factor that binds us together, in unity and in love. So thank you for laying that. Now we're talking about politics and this establishment that have largely excluded women from places of leadership, whether it's in politics, in governance, in institutions, and we do have some women in leadership. We have a lot of women are CEO of banks, but there is still that culture of subjection. I don't want to use the word oppression, but there's still that culture of subjection and where women are marginalized and really not included. And this has just come out. Again, it's not about Natasha, but it's a case study of typically what happens. So I know there are planned marches around the country, and that's major, right? It's not in one state, it's in, I think, about 24, correct?
so we organized, incidentally, it's called We Are All Natasha, which I convened. So I'm co-convening with Womanifesto. And basically it is around the country. There were other states going on today, and it's going to continue. We did Lagos and Edo, and I think Enugu also activated yesterday. Abuja have done this today, even though they were attacked by the police. Um, there's, I think Bauchi are doing theirs. So some are big, like Lagos that we did, some are small, but everybody is going around. We did Oyo State as well yesterday.
But why are we all Natasha? And why are we matching?
Okay, great question. So when you say you don't want to use oppression, I will use oppression. I will use oppression because, as you know, since I say it as it is, irrespective of whose office is board, because one of the things we do tend to do in Nigeria, and that's part of our patriarchy works. Patriarchy works by actually trying to orchestrate our voices and our minds and the way we think and the words that we use in a way that's more comforting to them rather than us being able to vent and actually speak it to their faces so it lands where it's supposed to land, right? As they say, to whom the cap fits, wear it. So why are we all Natasha is an excellent question. And why did I come up with that? Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, and I must tell all of you, I did not know her. She wasn't part of Purple Women. She wasn't my sphere. I just knew her as a politician, and more so, the last time I really connected with her was when she won her case to actually become senator this time, which was 6 months after everybody else was sworn in. Number one, but prior to that was the struggles that she had gone through in Kogi State with Yahaya Bello. But one particular case that always stuck with me, and I remember thinking, gosh, This woman is incredible. And again, I didn't know, I was just going by what I saw at the time, was when the former governor, Yahaya Bello, dug the road. He literally dug the road to her constituents to stop her from being able to campaign. That for me was the ultimate act of wickedness, but it was an ultimate act of impunity that is licensed by patriarchy, right? So why are we all Natasha? That's one of the reasons why we're all Natasha. Natasha is merely a catalyst. She's merely a symbol, right? I have no doubt. I've been in this space, as you said in my intro, for a very long time. Well, I've lived there for as long as I've lived here in Nigeria. I have never known Senator Natasha to be part of this women advocacy space. However, what also literally connected me to her again was, whilst she was at the Senate, my namesake, Senator Ireti, was being bullied. We all saw it. Again, I must warn all of you, I am obsessed with the news. That's my space. That's also my love. That's my passion. We all saw it. There had been an issue in Abuja, I think it was a fire, Senator Ireti Kingibe's constituency. She wanted to pass some sort of, what do they call it, petition or whatever, for some funds or whatever it was. And the way she was shut down, number one. Number two, when she moved the motion, nobody stood up to second the motion. Now, if nobody seconds the motion, nothing happens. The only person that stood up was Senator Natasha. And I remember thinking, that's what we're talking about. That's how they should be doing it. I will always never forget that. So that's how Senator Natasha remained in my head. That's also another reason why we are all Natasha, because we constantly say women should support other women. Now, when we say women should support other women, please bear in mind, it doesn't mean women should like every woman. People misunderstand that. Women supporting other women does not mean women liking every woman. I have once given a speech to say that I literally reserve the right not to like every woman, but I will do my damnedest best to ensure she gets my support wherever I can. It's literally that simple, right? Not every child likes their mother, but they love their mother. Let's look at it like that, or their father, or whoever it is. So when that issue happened between her and Senate President Akpabio about the seat, again, it was something that I drunk in. And I remember watching and thinking to myself, why did you say that? Because what she said that most people have forgotten was, first she said, oh, point of order, order 10. Please feel free to ask me what that means later so I don't bore you. But the point I want to bring out is, she then turned around and said, I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of you. And it didn't occur to anybody to think, in my head, I was just thinking, that's a loaded statement. Why would she say, I am not afraid of you? At that time, she hadn't said anything about the sexual harassment. This was the first altercation to do with the seats. So when I gave my first interview, way before the sexual harassment experience on News Central, I remember saying on that interview, look, seating arrangements is not just about, as many people like to make it, oh, she wants to be seen on TV. It's about visibility. It's about the fact that we have 4 female senators at the Senate. How many times do you see them? How many times do you see them? You don't. So what she's saying is that even where I am, you can just about see me as a woman, and then you want to move me even further away. Visibility, ladies and gentlemen, matters. Visibility matters even more so when you are a woman. It matters even more when you're a woman in our political landscape that's so jagged and so deceased in many ways. Visibility is about our daughters and our sons seeing the houses of parliament and seeing somebody that looks like their mother, and knowing that when they give birth to a girl, she can be there too, knowing that my mom didn't get there, not because she's not smart, but either because she wasn't interested in politics or because they blocked her from it. So visibility is what allows the imagination to travel. It inspires us to break walls and break barriers. So that's another reason why we are all Natashas. The final reason was that when she came up and then spoke out about the alleged sexual harassment, and I thought, wow, 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 wow. When I gave my interview 3 days before that, and I was quoted because I said, Akpabio is not God. He is merely the first amongst equal. It went viral. This woman has just literally said on TV something a politician, no female politician, has dared to speak. Something people like us have literally been encouraging. And we literally encourage women, victims, survivors of SGBV, which is sexual and gender-based violence. We encourage them to speak their truth. I created an app for this. As an old woman who's not supposed to create app, even though I'm not old. And here was this politician, a female politician, whose interview I had seen, who said, you know, she was doing a campaign, when she's doing one of her campaign runs in court. Thugs would come, boys would come and call her Ashewo. That they would constantly call her Ashewo, look at you, cannot be with your husband. You are an Ashewo, you are this. At a time when this woman had just actually connected the Nigerian government with the Russian government to get a 500 billion loan to revive Ajaokuta steel mill. And all they could call her was Ashewo. Here's this woman on TV saying, speaking her truth and saying, the Senate president sexually harassed me. Not once, the first time was in December, but twice, the second time was in February. Well, my jaw dropped and I had to go find it again. For that alone, and this is not a judgment on who is guilty. You see, again, this is an opportunity for me to say this. In our training as advocates, you are told, believe survivors. It doesn't mean you have pronounced them, the other side, as guilty. In order for you to get to the truth, to be able to investigate, impartial, unbiased, independent, open-minded, you need to believe what has been put in front of you. And then you go and investigate. Because if you dismiss it, then you've dismissed the possibility of learning and knowing and being able to actually take the case to court for the eventual judgment of who is guilty and who is not. However, in the case of sexual harassment, it is absolutely near on impossible to prove. Every woman, or the tiny minority of men who have experienced sexual harassment would have experienced it not once, but at least twice, number one. Number two is they will tell you they don't tell because it's almost legally in this case, it is worse than rape because legally with rape, we can get evidence. With sexual harassment, how do you get the evidence?
Thank you very much. And there are 2 points I want to make and then follow up with a question. And I want to just say to every woman out there, calling you Ashewu is a way to silence you, especially if you are in the space. If you are an assertive, courageous, and bold woman, the typical response, not just from men, from fellow women as well, is Ashewu, because it's a way to shame you, silence you, and move to the background. So I just encourage everyone, let it be something that bounces off your shoulder because you are not Ashewu, and don't let it be something that silences you. Then the second point, you talked about women supporting women. Um, we've had a conversation here where a lot of support comes more from men than women. Very few women actually rise up to support women. And I was having this conversation with one of my male friends about this situation, and he talked about the three elderly women in the Senate not supporting Natasha, actually speaking against her. And I had a response for that, but I want to hear your response because we do have that each of these three women that spoke against Natasha. I'm not impressed with their comments, but that's my own personal view as well, because I think it could have come in a different way, just like you said, believe the victim first and then investigate, not chastise or shame the victim. So how do and you also mentioned that Natasha supported Ireti at first. So I'm talking about this because we are all I'm using us. I'm using this as a case study for us to see where we fit in this game or this thing called life or this struggle that we all have. So why do women find it so difficult in this system to rise and support women, especially if they've also experienced it? Because women in leadership, I don't know that anyone. There was a video circulating of the first lady when she was in the Senate. I don't know if that was really her, but because I didn't see her full view, her face,
It
where
did.
Dino
It did.
Milaye actually made a statement that I'm not going to repeat because it is outrageous. And he got away with it. I don't know that he was sanctioned or he was punished for that statement. And then she retaliated. She fought back in the way that she knew how to. So that's one that was caught on videos, and I'm sure there are others like that. So speak to why women find it so difficult in this situation to rise up and support a woman that is going through something like this.
So here's the thing. When I hear women say, I get more support from women than men, I mean, from men than women, I often ask, what is your friend circle? Number one, what is your support structure like? And I'm talking about close support structure, because support comes in different ways, right? That's number one. Number two is, I actually don't believe that. I think what we tend to find is that when women do support other women, that support is perhaps more emotional and it's done privately. So, for instance, let me use an example of perhaps marriage. Women who are married, right? I'm not married, but women who are married, when they talk to each other, they often about the problems within their marriage. They often do it in a very sort of careful tone because they don't want to be seen as being the one that's destroying another person's marriage. Number one. Number two, here we are in a society, in a patriarchal society like that pitches women against each other. So I actually have to talk about patriarchy in this way. Patriarchy is hegemonous in the sense that it's a power structure, it's a dynamic that contains within a small minority, right? And what happens with patriarchy is It's a learned behavior that perpetuates over and over again, and then manifests itself both in women in a learned way. That is a way where that tells you that you are weak. You can't, like Titilayo, the girl lady I was talking about, you can't do this, you can't do that, right? Now, in that patriarchal space that has actually done that to women, you then see an Ireti who is unafraid, who will challenge men. I remember coming on holiday. I was with my uncle and we went to see one of his friends. You know, they were having a luncheon. This was even before I moved back. And, you know, there were the likes of Chief Olopade and stuff, and it was a small luncheon. And, you know, a certain new wife was sitting there. I swore they must have locked her mouth and put water in there saying it will come out. Because there I was questioning these old men saying, but this, but that, you know, and I do it to learn because I want to hear what they've got to say. I was that person that also moved to Nigeria, and I met a lot of resentment from women, and I had to learn. And I remember my girlfriend saying to me, one of my dear friends who I actually should have sent this invitation, she said to me, Ireti, hon, you have to remember something. You've grown up having a voice. Your mother brought you up. You heard your own voice, because that's what my mother would always say. Don't you dare shut up my daughters. Let them speak if they're wrong. And so what? She would say it in Yoruba, you know. So we were always told, especially me, the really vocal one, let her speak. My girlfriend said to me, you've grown up hearing your own voice. You've grown up in a society where you were allowed to speak that voice that was in your head. The women you are meeting in Nigeria, you are the shock to their system because they've been told they can't. So, of course, what happens when people meet, when women and men especially, but let me talk about women first. When women, a lot of women, when they meet somebody like me, they immediately think, whoa, 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 she's too much. She's too much. So I had to understand that it's a fear factor. Here I was suddenly that mirror that's inside them, that's bringing out everything they've always wanted to say, do, how they've always wanted to dare society, but couldn't. And now I'm saying to them, here I am, you can, go ahead. So it's not that women don't support other women, it's that women are also victims of a patriarchal structure that has subjugated and subdued and suppressed both their voices and thoughts, therefore pitching one against the other, right? There's also the society that says, she's not married. What have you got in common with her? Right? So there's that. If you hang out with her, you will end up messing up your marriage. Well, she loves her man. Heck, even if she doesn't love him, she likes the structure. It's not for me to judge. There are children in there, and somebody's got to pay school fees, right? So there's all these financial issues. So what has happened is women, when powerlessness is feminized, right? So powerlessness is in the shape of a woman, right? Whereas power, patriarchy, is in the shape of a man. So now that brings me to men. Men, the he for she's, as they call them these days, the men that will support you, a great deal of whom still needs to learn a lot, a lot. But you see what patriarchy does and why patriarchy is the absolute ultimate enemy of every single one of us, be it male, be it female. Patriarchy is the enemy of our society. Patriarchy is what prevents a society from progressing. And I'll explain why. What patriarchy does, like I said earlier, is it holds on to power. And it's that power it's in the hands of those, what is it? 9 minus 4 is what? 3, right? What's 9 minus 4?
9 minus 4 is 5.
It's 5. Thank you. 105 men at the Senate. There are 4 women. Patriarchy is what actually empowers those 104 men at the Senate and gives them that power and gives power to a particular elite where men, I'm talking about men now, even competent men cannot belong. They are feminized into beggars. Remember, I said the shape of powerlessness is a woman. They are feminized into beggars. A father cannot spend money, educate a child, and say, my child has passed his exams, is qualified, without having to call somebody. It might even be somebody they don't like, but they've got to be quiet, right? They have to do what needs to be done. That's how patriarchy works. So when men sit there and they sort of promote patriarchy, one has to laugh at them because it is self-harming. You are self-harming yourself because patriarchy continues to be the enemy that holds every society back. And finally, patriarchy thrives in countries where you have low economic growth and high poverty. Think about it.
Yeah, I play angel's advocate, and it's patriarchy, but isn't matriarchy really responsible for empowering patriarchy? Every man comes from a woman, and the first 5 years of their lives, which is when you really put seed into that child, you're with your mother. So, the role of women in enabling patriarchy cannot be overlooked. From the homes, you said something that your mother said, do not let her voice be silent. But matriarchy in our homes now, women, get ready, you're to be just be pretty, go to school, get married, and that's the ultimate. You are not supposed to do too much because which guys will not like you. You're too strong. You're going to send men away. So you're groomed to believe that your total existence is to get a man. So is it really patriarchy that is our problem in our society, or is it matriarchy? Because we have to accept responsibility for where the culture is today. And when I said that women are the ones that kind of antagonize women, and even in our small spaces, because of maybe their inability to speak up, you will find that those few women that can actually be themselves and speak up are the ones that are attacked by women. So is it really patriarchy that is our problem, or is matriarchy?
Patriarchy. It's patriarchy. And
But
that's
who
why I keep
enables
saying,
patriarchy?
no,
Who
no, no, but
raises this men?
no, it's patriarchy in this sense is a structure. It's systemic and systematic. Like I said, it's a societal thing. So women have been socialized into thinking and behaving a certain way. Yes, of course, think about it. Was it a woman that wrote there that Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the first woman to drive a car? When she did a heck of a lot more, it wasn't a woman. That is who controls the educational structure of our country? It is men, right? So a whole Fumilayo was actually reduced to the first woman to drive a car, as if that was the biggest thing she ever did. Women were the ones who were saying, no, she did more than that. What are you talking about? So what, she drove a car? That was the last thing she would want you to know about her. right? So when you say that the mothers are responsible, partly responsible, of course, but also, like I keep saying this and I will keep repeating, they are socialized. Patriarchy is a wider umbrella that's all embracing. It embraces both mother and father, right? And mother and father are actually victims of that structure. That structure that has said to the man, this is what a woman should be. That structure, and the man, the mother was brought up by a father and a mother that has learned that. So it gets passed on by generation. That's why. So I'm not talking about necessarily patriarchy in the shape of male, right? Because that's often what happens
You're
when people
talking
think
about the
about patriarchy.
establishment
Yes,
or the
people think
institution
of
of it. Yeah.
patriarchy in the shape of male. You have patriarchy is not a gendered word in this case. So you have
Okay.
patriarchal gatekeepers. Who are the other female senators that you are talking about, right? Because for every hegemony, for every power, there has to be gatekeepers, those who will water it, those who will protect it. Remember, for every civil rights movement, there was sabotage. Did that stop them from being black? No. Did that stop them from being minority? No. Do you understand? And even though the saboteurs knew that they were fighting a bigger monster, so patriarchy in this case is the monster that every one of us is fighting. So yes, of course, when you have mothers who bring up their sons in a particular way. Yes, you have mother-in-laws who judge their daughters in a particular way. They have a different measuring stick for their daughter or for their daughter-in-law. Of course, these are perpetrators of patriarchal behavior. They are patriarchal gatekeepers. Misogyny is not a gendered word either. You have female misogynists, you have female patriarchists. It's so we whilst it largely benefits men all over the world, not just in Nigeria, right? The little bit that you have, like the Kemi Badenochs, who are the blacks that think that they're, because the white structure has allowed them in, their proximity to whiteness removes their blackness and stops her from being an African Nigerian child of an immigrant. You have those ignorant people like that. Do you understand? You have the black face, white mask people, just the same in patriarchal structures and societies as well. So, yes, women at it. And you talked about the women who have been through it and those who should know better. But remember, there's also the financial thing where a woman is basically, how should I say, conditioned to default to husband for financial, uh, I don't know, financial, not so much financial, that's not what I'm looking for, what sort of financial inspiration, leadership, that's the word, for financial leadership, even if she's the one that's smart at money, right? So when you get a man that says, oh, every month all the money goes into our joint account, she's the one that looks after it, they start to laugh at him. Oh, but hang on a minute, my wife is an excellent accountant. She's actually a great money manager. In fact, if not for her, we wouldn't have bought 4 or 5 houses. They start laughing at him. They start calling him names. They start calling him the names. Woman rapper. Do you see how powerlessness is actually shaped in feminine terms? Right?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm talking about. So those women, like the Florence Itagiwas, like the Ireti Kingikis, whilst I am incredibly angry with them, I also see what their issue is. In actual fact, I see what their affliction is. They are afflicted by fear. They are afflicted by fear, Ireti in particular, who actually has to run for a second term. And she's having to face one of the worst politicians we have in Nigeria, who actually does not even recognize her. He does not acknowledge her power as a senator. He constantly bypasses her. So she's literally trying to live up to them so she can get that favor. Do you see how these things work?
So that comes back to us as a culture. So maybe this is not a political issue.
Oh, there's
Maybe
a cultural issue in there.
so because
But
this is maybe that's really what the issue is, right? Maybe that's what we should address. Because again, I was talking about matriarchs being responsible because they raise this men or this crop of people that now that become patriarch or that subscribe to the establishment of patriarchy. They're raised by matriarchs. And so when looking at our culture or our society as a whole, the politics is a reflection of the culture and society. The people we have in leadership is a reflection of our culture and society. So, coming back to that, in what we ourselves, as individuals, you talked about yourself, and that's why I asked about the foundation of Purple Women. How do we begin to dismantle this stranglehold? And I'm using the word stranglehold. How do we begin to dismantle this stranglehold in our culture that is affecting our political landscape, our corporate landscape, our social landscape, every sector of our community? So we harassment is not limited to politics, right? It's in the banks, it's in the schools. Again, it's our culture. How do we begin to dismantle it? What are some of the practical action we can take as individuals to begin to break down this institution that is impacting us so much?
so let's go back a little bit. Let's go back 100 years, 200
How
years,
many years do you want to go back?
however many you want to. Nigerian women always had power. You see, that's why I don't buy that culture thing, right? Nigerian women had power. Nigerian women led and rose and fought the colonialists. Nigerian women refused. When they talk about the independence of Nigeria, they forget to talk about the women that went with them to the United Kingdom. Women went with them to go and negotiate our independence. It wasn't just the men. When you talk about the market women uprising, market is our economy. Heck, all the digital markets were actually the digital form of our traditional markets, right? You had women like Pelumotu and Alimotu Peluura, or Peluura Alimotu, I always get it back, who weren't educated formally, or should I say they were not learned, right? Because that's the other thing. We need to use the right language. Education is not about English. She wasn't learned. Heck, my mother, the great Jerriat Seriki, wasn't a learned woman, but she was incredibly passionate about empowering women. She empowered us with education. Pelumotu Aniwura empowered the women of the Lagos Island markets, Lagos markets, against the colonialists, right? You have the likes of Margaret Ekpo. You have so many, somebody's just writing there, about women's riots, right? There are so many. Look, I was reading, and I'll send it to you, see, so you can share it on whatever forum you share with the people on this. 100 women article came out yesterday. 109 women in Nigerian history you probably should know about. I dare say, if you stop 100 Nigerian women high. They'll probably be able to mention one or two. Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti will come up to the top. Do you get my point? But you have all these women all over the country, from north, south, east. There's a woman in particular who actually, not only did she fight Sharia, she took a gun and broke it. Do you understand? So we have to go back to our history to know that culturally, as Nigerians, women have always had power. Number one, women were part of the Oyo Kingdom that we always refer to now. Yes, they're always part of most palaces. We have the Yalafi now. We have the Yalode. Those were
A lot
all
of them.
political, exactly. Those were all political positions. And then something really awful happened to us. The white people came. And they came with their traditional abuse and subjugation of women from their society. And they started to tell our men, why now? Why are you allowing them so much power? We didn't
So it's the
allow
white people again. It's the colonial masters again.
Right.
Okay.
They didn't. In British tradition, a woman was a chattel. Heck, she couldn't have a name. Are you with me? So, whereas in Nigeria, I remember my mother's generation, they would say in Lagos women, and the same was in the southeast, and, you know, like, that's what they used to call them, right? Because traditionally, Nigerian women had power. You had the Christianization of Nigeria. Then you also had the colonization of Nigeria. And then all of that combined together suddenly began to tell you that, hang on a minute, women are not supposed to be this, women are not supposed to be that.
Supposed to be that, yeah.
Right? And so that's how we got here. What you now have, and I must correct this, is you have a society where the private sector is actually getting better, where women are concerned. You have women leaders, you have heads, chairman of boards, and all of that stuff.
Yes.
CEOs. If you think back to, like, I don't know, perhaps even 25, 30 years ago, you would see talk panels without any woman. Now you dare not. You dare not have a panel, whether it's tokenism, whether it's not tokenism, you better have a woman on there. Otherwise, everybody will abuse you. Your HR will get involved. So you see how things are shaping and changing, albeit inch by inch within the private sector. It's our political sector that refuses to change.
Okay, good.
Because they are the fungi. They are the fungi in our society. Whereas, ideally, they should be the leaders. We should be seeing near 40-60, 60-40 representation.
Okay.
Right? But they won't allow it, because what happens with power? Think about it. Its power is about privilege, right? And when you want change, people resist violently to change, because change is jarring. And change is saying, give up some of that power you've got. Change is saying, face your vulnerability. Change is saying, look behind you. There's 1 million other people that are hungry. There are 2 million behind them that will actually kill you if they have a chance. Change is forcing up people, is forcing them to come into a room, to actually come and face the truth. And truth is the hardest thing to swallow as human beings. So our political structure continues. Think about, I think in Jonathan's time, we had 19 female senators, I think, if I remember rightly. I think in Buhari's time, we had 9. Now we have 4. It's a regression. They are regressive. We can't say we're going backwards. We can't, because if we're going backwards, we would be going to a fabulous place, right? Would be going to a place where women were recognized, are parts of nation builders. What we are doing is we are regressing. We are going further and further. Our political structure is going further and further down into an abyss because we've allowed patriarchy. Patriarchy is about impunity. Look at what's happening with Donald Trump.
That is another topic for another day, but this is a good way for us to move into questions and answers, questions from the audience, because I don't want this to be a conversation between just the two of us. And I already see Auntie's hand
May
up.
I grab some water? I forgot.
Oh, yes, please get some water. So before we start taking questions, please, if you have a question, please raise your hand. The way we do this, we will take 2 or 3 questions at the same time, and then we'll have our special guest respond to the questions. Ireti will be back in a few minutes. Pastor Sonny, I see you're on. Do you want to chime in before we start taking questions? Welcome, Pastor Sonny. Okay, so maybe he's not. So they didn't leave it to just the women folk today. Unfortunately, our principal, Pastor Itwa, had to be at a wake keeping this evening, but he did start the session. And Pastor Sonny also had another engagement, but he joined to support. And I'm sure at some point he will come up and speak as well. So Ireti, welcome back. I have, and I always call them some of the shoulders that I stand on. I have Auntie Yemisi and Professor Grange, and then I have my sister Helen as well. I'm going to take all 3 of them, take their 3 questions or comments, and then I'll have you respond to it in that batch so that we can take more questions. Faye, please look through the chat and see if there are any questions that are in the chat room. And then the way we do this, we try to keep it short so that we have more people that can participate. Auntie, please go ahead with your question. Auntie Yemisi.
Ireti.
I always represent you well.
I said, oh my goodness, it's going to be a fiery night. And you did not disappoint.
Good afternoon, Ma. Good afternoon, Auntie. It's been a while.
Afternoon, my dear. We'll talk later. But let me face you frontally today.
Okay, ma.
Now, one of the issues that I think kind of creates the murkiness around the women's movement is not picking our battles as effectively as we may. Because I think what kind of diluted Natasha's case was the issue of where she sat. And the emotionalism, the drama that followed just that bit kind of made everybody think, I mean, what's going on? And you said it. You said it's about visibility. We understand that it's about visibility. It's about putting women in places where they can really, speak loudly and have their voices heard. But I think in doing that, we must commit even more effectively, more rigorously to following the rules so that we're not, the issues are not diluted. So that's something I wanted you to speak about, the issue of picking the battles and ensuring that because in the women's movement, it's the women that have had to try 100 times more than the men to actually gain the positions they have had. So Nigerian women, I think, must begin to rethink this a bit. Regarding the sexual harassment allegations, I am quite, I'm someone who wants to be very fair because I'm just as angry when a man is falsely accused as I am when a woman is assaulted or harassed in any way. So I really want that court case that she has filed to throw more light on the veracity of what actually happened, and I think that's what we must all push as women, that proper investigations should happen so that the truth, and we want to make sure that our men don't see us as male destroyers. Women are protectors of male and female and children and people who are disadvantaged. And that's the role we must make very clear, that it's not just about women, it's not just about fighting for women, it's about fighting for the society, it's about fighting for women and men, to make sure that our men don't have to prostitute themselves to other men to get jobs, to get positions, and behave in juvenile ways and subservient ways to get on in the society we have built. So those sexual cases, I think, allegation cases should go on, and the women should push for clarity and fairness in those investigations. Jumoke talked a lot about men are what their mothers have trained them to be. So let us apologize to all our men that we didn't train you to be who you should be, because you should be a happier, more independent, more
secure.
more secure human being. If you are trained properly to respect every other human being, not to be someone who wants to control another human being, spend your energy controlling yourself and supporting others, and not seeing yourself as superior to anybody who thinks they're superior to another human being has a mental issue. So we must help our men to really tackle the effect it has on them, the negative effect it has on them, the way they are being dribbled about by godfathers and godmothers and stuff like that. It demeans them. Let us push that narrative of the benefits to men when they allow an equitable space for everyone. So the question I want to ask you is the details. How do we change the culture, the traditions, the religious beliefs? It's very difficult for a human being to say that they're a Christian, and then in that book they say God said that the man is the head. You may be able to challenge culture because, okay, that's made by men, but religious beliefs are very strong, very difficult to challenge. So how do we, women and men, deal with that? How do we overcome those very, very strong systems that, as you said, have been brought by colonials, didn't weren't brought by us? How do we manage it? And the history of Europe is really the history of gender discrimination. They had it in spades. The women there had to overcome it in various ways. How did they do it? I want you to speak to that. And how can we women take responsibility? Stop blaming the men. We made them that way. Apologize to them, give them some hugs, and let them know that no, we may have made the mistakes, but right now we're ready to correct it, and we're ready to tell you that women are strong. They're even stronger than you. Come and have babies, and you know what having strength is. How do we change the whole narrative? At the same time, making the men comfortable, our sons comfortable with the society that we're all trying to build. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Auntie.
Good to see you. We'll talk
Thank you,
after
Auntie.
the show,
Yeah.
Ireti. And you,
All right.
Jumoke.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Auntie.
thank you, as always.
Professor Grange, go ahead, ma.
Thank you,
Let's take a
Jumoke. But
note.
please allow me to
Let's
show
take a
my
note.
face.
Oh, okay.
Allow me
Let me.
because I am.
Yeah, the reason we did this was because of hackers, and
I know.
so if you want your video, I've asked you to please go ahead, ma. If you want to turn
Okay,
on your video,
thank
please
you.
go ahead and turn on your video.
Right,
If you're
because I
interested
want
in doing
Ireti
that.
to see that I'm with her in wearing purple.
And
Just
Ireti is
like
not wearing
you.
purple today.
Just no, but she's Purple
Good evening,
Heart.
ma'am.
She's Purple Heart, you know. So anyway, Ireti, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and taking us down memory lane with our grandmothers and all that. So my own contribution to this is from personal experience of my very late grandmother, paternal grandmother, who in fact brought up her children single-handedly because her husband had 8 wives. So that scenario of women deriving their power from taking on responsibilities is what actually obtained in those days, you know. And so, having brought up my father loved her to the hilt, really. And, and because of that, he also showed partiality to his daughters, he got that feeling that women are actually stronger and nicer than men. He hardly saw his father. He only saw his mother, who was going to the market and getting, you know, becoming tired and all that, and still finding food for them. So what I'm trying to say is this, that how men behave depend on the dynamics, the intrafamilial dynamics. If they tend to copy rather than talk about things with their parents. So if they see their father just ill-treating their mother, although they did not think that it was ill-treatment, but just leaving everything to the mother. And in those days it was okay, but in these days the men will interpret it in a different way, and that is that okay, women are there to do everything, to do the chores, and I don't have to bother. So that is that. And again, the Christian marriage brought us into a different dynamic. Christian marriage says that we must swear an oath that we will serve our husbands, whereas the husbands will only, well, I don't know. Nowadays they say probably love the wife or something, but we will serve. So with that kind of oath, what do you want the women to do? When they start getting ill-treated, they've already sworn that oath, and they've seen all their own peers sticking to their marriages, and and you don't want your children to feel that they are they're abandoned to the fathers who normally will not have time for them. So that is for the present. That was how we transited from our grandmother's perception of what they should do for their children and husbands to what we were now doing in our family, to our families. So I think you will agree with me that is really what has happened. But now, what do we do for the future?
Going forward.
Yes, I have had interaction with my grandchildren, both boys and girls. And I find that they have the same problems, except that the girls are better able to articulate their problems. The boys simply will not talk. They become sullen. They don't even know what is wrong with them, you know. And in that situation, if you have a father who also is not does not communicate, then that boy is lost. Unless the mother has learned to now communicate with the boy. I'm saying this because it's a very real thing now in our society. And the boys they feel inferior. In fact, they feel inferior to the girls now because the girls seem to be doing better than the boys. But because of that, they try to cover it up by sheer bravado, because they are boys, so they must not feel inferior and all that. So there are all those issues going on with the children of today. And what I feel, therefore, is that parents have to be trained to carry on better parenting within the context of the um, current situations, ideologies, and technology, and all that. Parents really have a lot of work to do with both sexes, both girls and boys, which means that they need to find time to learn more about the gender differences, gender issues, emotional intelligence, and challenging stereotypes, and trying to get coping mechanisms or to discuss coping mechanisms with their children. So this is, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I cannot leave this opportunity. A Christian marriage, just to put that in there, if men and women follow the dictates of a Christian marriage, there will be no issues because the man is supposed to love his wife as Christ loved the church and even give his life for her. So he's supposed to do that. Just putting that out there. So the men too should take that responsibility so that the women can accept them. Helen, please go ahead. And then we'll take two hands. So you address these three questions or comments, and then we'll take the next set. Please go ahead, Sister Helen, with your comments.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So my own question borders on what are the practical ways, practical being the watchword here, what are the practical ways in which we can face patriarchy? Now, the background to this question is we've all agreed here, at least the speakers so far have agreed that patriarchy is not a question of politics. It is something that borders on religion and culture. And because it borders on religion and culture, it is deeply embedded in the way a lot of us see things, not just the men, but also the women. So I see a situation where our Gen Zs, are deeply irritated by the way we, the Gen X's and the baby bloomers, behave towards, their fathers, our husbands. And they would ask, why do you do this? Why do you have to come back from work and you're so tired and you go into the kitchen to cook? Why can't he make food for himself? After all, you both went out to work. Those kind of questions. But looking back at them, we realize that the same things they're complaining about, that the women are behaving in a weak manner and allowing the men to overrule them, I see it happening to them. I see the way they dress. I see this whole idea of BBL, exposing your body. Who are you exposing your body for? It's still the same thing you're berating, the older generation for. You're also trying to get the attention of the men. So why are you saying that we are allowing bad behavior? Like I said, somebody said, patriarchy, women are the gatekeepers of patriarchy because we're the ones who raise the children. We're the ones who raise the girls and tell them, you have to respect your husband. Your husband is the head, he's the king of the home and all that. So really, we are the ones who encourage it. But I think there's a middle course to all this, We don't have to take the Chimamanda route. We also don't necessarily have to take the the weak route where we just feel that the men are everything. I would rather prefer where we take the Mrs. Awoshika route. As successful as she is in her career, she still has time to take care of her husband, take care of the home. I think that's a route we can take, and that's a wiser route because men are filled with ego. And while you're trying to get what you want, you know, you're fanning his ego, but you're getting what you want. You're not weak. You're actually strong because you know where you're getting to, but you're being very wise about it. And so, like one of the speakers said, we need to be wise to choose our battles wisely, and not only choose our battles wisely, also choose our strategies wisely. It is by doing that that we can actually be able to overcome patriarchy the way we are suffering now. So please, Madam Ireti, my question, like I said, is what are the practical ways in which we can face patriarchy and overcome it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ireti, we'll take those three and then we'll take the last set of questions. Thank you.
Perhaps the one thing I should have said at the beginning is most of you, 90% of you are not going to like me. Let me just make this clear. I don't agree with anybody that it's that any comments that I've answered. I am that Gen Z. I don't see anything wrong with what Chimamanda said. I am a feminist. I was brought up by a feminist. Why are we afraid of feminism? I do not agree that we need to apologize to any man. No. That's what my mother taught me. That's what our value is. That's how we were brought up. And the same thing exists in other languages in Nigeria. That's where wisdom and discernment and socialization comes in. We all know the difference between right and wrong. So why then should I have to apologize to you? Because you're a man. Man for what? Apologize for what? No. We will not be apologizing. I'm a Gen, whatever, X, Y, Z, whatever. But I will not apologize. My mother never apologized to anybody. And Auntie, let me see. Madam Familaya Ransom Kuti never apologized to anybody. Heck, she did not obey rules. We were not born to obey these rules. If you obey rules, those who conform are not disruptors. Conformists do not change the world. Disruptors change the world. The reason the white man continues to actually seemingly go forward beyond where we are is because, and the Chinese, they will take this remote control and open it and take it apart. When they were buying that remote control, that's not what they were supposed to do. But they open it and take it apart because they want to see how it works, and then they see how it can be made. That's what you're getting in our young people. I'm sorry, like I said, I'm not here to be liked. And I don't want anybody to like me. I'm gonna speak my truth and people don't have to agree with me. I do not agree that we have to conform to their rules. Heck, I'm about breaking the table. I'm not even about being invited to the table. I want to shatter it, break it into all different pieces. Yes. That's what I am about, right? I am that person. I am that feminist. I am that one that will walk into a room and I will greet everybody, but you are not my father, as I said in my interview on Arise. You are Mr. President, who I elected to be in the position that you are at. So I owe you the respect of office. Beyond that, I owe you the respect of my culture. But my gender will not be subjugated because of you. What Natasha did, and this is where I said, I wrote it down. No, there's the three ways I say to people. There's something about leadership. That profile of mine seems very long. It doesn't even cover everything that I've had. I'm probably on my 5th or 6th career, and I'm only 55. Right? There's something about leadership Some are born with it naturally. Others are taught to be a leader. Here's the thing. And some basically buy their way into it, as we know. Here's the thing. Natural born leader will tell you there are 3 ways to do things. There's the right way, there's the wrong way, there's the as best as I can way. Why do I say that? So the rules of the Senate says the Senate have the right to change your seat, right? The same goes for your boss at your office, right? They can decide to change your seat. But who here would be happy if they arrived to work on Monday morning to find that their desk had been moved? Nobody. That's what that seat is about. Heck, as a Black person working in the West, and you already have your seat or your table is the one near the back, right? 2 desks away from the swinging door that annoys everybody. But you've been coping with it to judge you. And now they want to move you to the other side where there's a double swinging door. But nobody informed you so that you can prepare your mind ready and think and call them all the names you want to call them before you arrive at work. And you put on your shield and you're like, I'm going to get there and I'll deal with this because they're not going to harm me. No, no, no. They wait for you to arrive and suck it to you. That's what they did to her. Like I said, because we have the power, because we can, that's what my mother would say, doesn't mean we must. There is absolutely nothing wrong in writing, and I bet you others were written, in writing and saying, Madam, please note, as of such and such date, your seat number will be such and such. She should not have, and she was at the plenary the day before. She was there the day before. Let's remember that. So even the day before, they could have informed her that your seat, as of tomorrow, your seat will be here, there, and wherever. Nobody informed her. It was the sergeant at arms that informed her when she got there that day. And of course, I would, like I said, conformists don't change the world. She went to her seat. The chief whip then stood up and said, point of order. The honorable member is sitting in the wrong place. Hang on a minute. Think about it. Chief whip knows where she's supposed to be. Why? If that wasn't planned. Why? That's number one. So she said, Natasha stands up, or Senator Natasha stands up and says, order, order, point of order, order 10. They turned off her mic, number one. Not only did they turn off her mic, they tried to stop her from speaking. Let me read to you what order 10 says, because it's something that I've been having to educate a lot of people about. Order 10 is known as an SOS. And this is what order 10 says. It says, bear with me. Order 10. Listen very carefully. Any senator may rise at any time to speak upon a matter of privilege suddenly arising. And he noticed, oh, that's the other thing we need to talk about. The amount of times our rule books, our constitutions always refer to he. I think it was counted. It was like 300 and something times more than you ever heard she in our constitution, but that's a whole different matter. So here it also says, it's all he. He shall be prepared to move without notice, a motion, without notice, a motion declaring that a contempt or breach of privilege has been committed, or referring the matter to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. But if the matter is raised in the committee of the whole Senate, the chairman shall leave the chair to report progress. I sent this to his son because since the matter happened, I have been educating lawyers who are perpetrators of patriarchy were arguing with me. So today, a dear friend of mine who was a lawyer called me today, not even because of this, because we're still arguing this. And I kept saying, Order 10 is it's nicknamed SOS. Basically, it means you can speak. You can raise this order from wherever you are in that Senate chamber. So I wrote to a son today, and I will keep his name private because I didn't ask if I could quote him. And I said, bro, afternoon, bro, I need your lawyer explanation on this. I sent him that passage, it's a page, in layman's language. When Natasha invoked this order, according to this order 10, is it presumed that she can only speak it from her allocated seat, or does the seating rule, that's the new allocation, override this? You know what he said? It cannot be overridden. I then went on. Do you mean that it can only be invoked, that's order 10, from the allocated seat? He said, of course not. It means it must be heard. The seat allocation is not law. And people, women, have reached out to this woman and been asking her to apologize. She's like, what are you asking me to apologize for? The Senate president needed her to finish reading order 10 because it's an SOS. It's an SOS under the Privileges under the Privileges Act rule of the Senate, and then continued. Senator Natasha, in fact, as she raised that, the ethics committee should have taken that into, and they should have stopped everything and actually taken that order that she's raising. That's why it's called an SOS. So therefore, again, I will say to you, that seating allocation is about visibility. And I will keep saying that. I will fight for that, because how many times when you see that Senate shown, how many times do you see any of the 4 women? Heck, the Senate president of Nigeria has such a in actual fact, actively speaking, not constitutionally, actively, the Senate president has more powers than the VP. Why do I say that? The VP works and his boss has to pretty much authorize it, approve it, is that the Senate president is the one that shapes all of our lives. The Senate president can actually make our president unemployed. The Senate president has so much powers in this country. So we must remember that when Senator Natasha stood up and she said order 10, a Senate president that knows the rules, that respects the rules of the Red Chamber, that respects the Constitution, that is not driven by patriarchal ego, one that respects and knows and works as the first amongst equal, would have heard and allowed her to finish her order. Senator Natasha has nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry. And I'm so sure if our matriarch, all of them, Margaret, Olufumilayo, Alimotu, Gambo, all of them, if they were alive, there is absolutely no way they will be apologizing to any man. In actual fact, I dare say there are many times they told the men, choo, 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 that was not recorded on paper, right? So that's one answer. Sorry. Boys feel, I wrote something about the boys feel inferior to girls. Yes, of course they do. Why? I'm a mother of a boy, and that's also what freaks people out. So I can speak to both parts. I'll give you a quick example. Remember, we have been at this journey at empowering our girls with education, with confidence, knowing how to navigate, My mother never asked me who I was going to marry. She only ever asked us every so often, what do you want to be? I will change it today. I want to be a hairdresser. She'll buy you a doll. Today I want to be fashion. She'll buy you this. She never once sat us down to say, what kind of man do you want? That's number one. But so what we've been doing is saying to our girls, you can do this, you can do that, you can do whatever. Guess what? Whilst we were doing that, the men forgot to do their job with the boys. I'm not, you want that apology, BT Bawo? They forgot to do their jobs with the young boys in our society. I have written about this. I have shouted about this. And I keep saying to them, I am in a group that's a closed group. There are only 8 women, 10 maximum. There's about 60 something of us. The rest are men. And on that group, they know me. Then day I got to that group, I shaped up all the men. And I keep pointing at them. We keep having this Yahoo, this. One boy did that, this. What are you guys doing? Stop pontificating. How many of you go out there in the community and work with young boys? You keep expecting women to do everything. Please, let's stop blaming women and centering the blame on women. Was my mother not brought up by a woman? And guess what? She wasn't allowed to go to school. So what did she do? She made sure her children were educated. She made sure that was her way of fighting back society. She left Ikorodu and pretty much created Potter and called all the Yoruba girls from all over the Southwest. Oh yeah, why she shop? So much so that the documentary is being done on her, not by a Nigerian company, but by a foreign company. Because our Nigerian women, our Nigerian women, gave industry to a little Austrian village called Lustenau,
Yes.
where women were not allowed to be seen. They had to be in the kitchen. At the time when our mothers were doing business, when they were controlling things, we were telling the Oyinbos how to design the lace. The Oyinbos will go back there and bring it back. In Austria, the Oyinbo, Lustenau, they have business. They have an industry. They now use that money. They have fabrics that can reach your heartbeat. Why? All thanks to our women in Gota. And Abeokuta taught lace. Apologize, Sanwotani. We will never apologize. Let's quash all apology. Never apology in any woman's language.
Apologies all across. So we are going to take Dr. Nandi and Auntie Yemisi one last time. I think that's all the hands that we have up. And then we are going to start to close. Go ahead, Dr. Nandi.
Yes, sorry, I will let my camera be. I'm in the field.
Okay, that's fine, sir.
Right. Very important discussion going on today, because when we talk about constitutional reconstruction, it also goes to societal the purpose is societal reconstruction. And now it is these unspoken aspects that actually, like the software of whatever hardware you're doing, is this unspoken aspects that actually bring the outcomes that will shape things to what they finally become. You may do all of what you think is more important. Then you leave this path. Then you have a society that's upside down. Now let me tell you the radical thing, going to the question of Madam Helen about what are the practical ways by which we can get these things changed from what they've been, patriarchy and all of the trouble that comes with it. I'm happy Auntie Yemisi is here because she was in Pronaco. When we got to the point in Pronaco, when we had taken the decisions and we had to write drafts of the constitution, that we were going to propose to the country, there was a Nohoro sharing. And the Nohoro never ceased to tell us the stories of what they had to do in those early times when they were fighting for the independence and when they began to govern as the foreigners, as the colonial masters began to dress back. In Western region, for instance, they had to create seats for women that were not to be contested with men, just so that the women could come to parliament. Because if you left them to go to fight all on their own, they will never get there. And he kept reminding us that the first woman that had to fill the seat, the first seat they created was the mother of Professor Jadesola Akode, the professor that was vice chancellor at Lagos University. She was in the conference. And so the radical thing we did a few radical things to get to solving this problem at source, getting down to write the rules in a manner that will force the situation around. And so we decided that the Constitution Drafting Committee at Pronaco will be headed by a woman. And it fell on Professor Jadesola Akande. I was secretary. There were we created the criteria in a manner that made room for her to emerge, because there were other very senior advocates present in the conference, including Solomon Asemota, that you all know. He became the vice chairman, but the chairmanship went to Jadesola Akande. Now, what are the contents that we are trying to, bring into being that will compel everybody to move away from what they used to do? We listed 5 things that will be the basic things that the country must provide for the citizen. Because if you remove those 5 things, 3/4 of the women's problems will be solved. We said no child should go to bed without food, so there is food. We talked about shelter. We talked about healthcare. What are the things we can put in place in the constitution we are drafting that will remove the money from source? The country has 10 billion. How much of it are we prepared to put aside before we begin to award contract for stadium that will provide those 5 basic things? Because the moment you take care of them, the women, because the men who go to drink beer in the evening, is to the women that the children who come to look for food. If when they go to school and they are chased away, it's the women that will be the first to know, and all of that. If they get sick, it's the women that so we then looked at what the income profile of Nigeria is, and 15% of what Nigeria was earning at the time was enough to provide these 5 basic things before the rest can go into general appropriation. And it was in Jadesola Akande being the chair of that drafting committee that we're able to bulldoze our way to, getting it written. And Nigeria will eventually have to come to contend with the contents of that draft, no matter how they solve. What we're doing now is to get rid of what is in place that has blocked the road for every other thing. Once we get it out of the way, then the country will come back to the details. That's where the devil is, on what we need to do to move our society away from the kind of madness we have seen all over the place. The one happening in National Assembly, just a tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. You go to the schools and you weep. You go to the workplace and you cry. You go to every obstacle is set on the way. Meanwhile, one-on-one, our women folk are not in any way inferior. In fact, you could rely more on them for what has to be done properly than the rest. Of course, the men too have to, the boys who have now lost their way, like this big brother Nigeria that we're talking about. You can see this, the societal values have been turned all upside down, and we have a mad society to show for it. And I think it's an important conversation that's going on, and we will soon come to where this little discussion will be basis of asking those who actually know, like the guest speaker, some of those details of how things came up. They want the church, the culture, and the religion. There will be people who will sit down and see how much of it can be, identified and resolved at source. The men will also, we have to find the men who will also do the kind of thing that the Nohuru did, to say, let us move the big stones. They can't remain there. A few years ago, I was speaking at Celebration, and I was a guest speaker at the Celebration, I think 4 or 5 years ago. And when I was talking about the radical fella and what he did, because I grew up partly in Abeokuta, so I knew them to the home. And I began to talk about Fumilario Ransom. I said, fella was a gentleman if you were to compare his activism with the kind of thing Fumilario Ransom Kitty managed to do. And so the younger people in the audience were wondering which woman could do this kind of a thing, and we've never heard about her. And so there's so much to look back at in what our women managed to do when the men could not cope with the colonial, onslaught that we can build on today, but institutionalized by working the details into our rule books so that those obstacles are removed from their way permanently. Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity.
very much for your contribution. And I like one of the recommendations that you spoke to, which is creating a space for women to come on board. And then you saw the value of having that woman that was a part of this. Thank you for that contribution. So we are going to take the last hand, and then Ireti, I'm going to ask you to close, and then we'll come to a close. This is an inexhaustible conversation. This is one that will probably keep having at the kitchen table, everywhere we can, because it's a conversation that is important to reforming not just our culture, but our society at large. Adi, please go ahead with your comments, and then Ireti, I'll have you close, and then we will close here as well. Thank you so much.
Darling Ireti, I don't like disagreeing with you, but
generational difference.
I have to.
We would have a family meeting for that disagreement and
later.
Generational difference.
Yeah, it's not just that. I am somebody who's really interested and passionate about facts, and creating a solution that that's a win-win at the end of it. Now, the issues around Funlai ransom, I mean, you can't know her more than me. There were many times that she apologized. Many times that she apologized. The story that has been written is not complete. And naturally, I mean, they can't capture everything. She was somebody who knew the power of strategy, where she was strong and she could deal with this, and where she had to manage the situation. So she was very, very capable and willing, and did apologize many times. Now, people also, I told Austin Peters, Bolanle, that there's another story that she must write, and that is the story of Eniola Soyinka.
Yeah.
Because the people that made Funlayo succeed were the Eniola Soyinkas, because she was Funlayo was a grammar, talking English, all of that. Eniola Soyinka was the grassroots person. She was the one who was connected to the market women. She was the one who was mobilizing. She was really the strength of that movement. And I hope that story is also written. And that brings me to the point of the movement that we have now. I don't see enough connection with those grassroots women, with those market women association. We've all, you talked about your mother being a trader, Tinumbu's, the mother was a trader. All those women that used their normal instincts and qualities and character and power to do great things are being marginalized by the women's movement, where a lot of the conversation is happening in workshops and conferences and Beijing and all of that. I want to see a lot more collaboration and support for those women who are. Natasha is not a deprived woman. She's very strong. I'm sure she can fight her own battles. Ukraine. She's from Ukraine, so
she's
I understand.
Ukrainian. Yes,
she's half Ukrainian. So I know she can fight her battles. I'm not worried about the Natasha of this world. I am more worried about those women who are truly marginalized. And the women's movement, the women's movement, and I've said this a lot to the leadership of the women's movement. I'm just repeating it in a forum like this, that there's not enough connection to those women who are truly marginalized, the support that they need, the education that they need to be able to combat the stereotype, the culture, and all
And
that,
their views.
and their views. Those are the ones we should be engaging. The young women at that very, very, very basic level who don't understand all the grammar we are talking. And finally, another point I want us to make is that the purpose of our movement is to make sure that the men, our boys, our girls, and particularly those who are disadvantaged, disabled, and all that, have better lives. That is the purpose of the movement, to empower them. You are empowered, I'm empowered. Jumoke is going to be okay, whatever happens. And many women in this group that went, it is those women down there who are not able, who do not understand what we're talking about, that
Ones
we
that
must
don't have
engage.
voices.
You don't have voices. They are the ones, if one of them are empowered to the point where they speak, they will have a more reverberating
Yes.
effect on
Yes.
the system than those of us who are already seen as the elite, who are privileged, spoiled, so they don't give you a seat. What the heck? What's the matter with you? That kind of thing. Because that is what the message is sent to the generality of women who cannot read the Constitution and the laws that you are discussing here. So
Yeah.
please let us use this opportunity to engage with those women down there and
Thank
be
you.
less vocal. Let's give them the voice. Let's give them the
The voice.
capacity,
Thank you.
financially and intellectually, to understand why the battle is important. What's wrong with my husband looking after me? Why should they feel differently? And also, we must not make the mistake that the feminist movement made in other parts of the world, and that is to denigrate other women who make different choices. If
Versus.
you as a woman decide
True.
that you want to be under your husband and be, looking at a homemaker and all that,
That's
great.
your
We love you
prerogative.
just the
Yeah.
same. That's
Yeah.
what it's all about.
Yeah.
So those are just my final comments. I want us to
Thank you, Auntie.
have a win-win situation in this struggle that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie. I
Love you
don't
all.
love you too. We had Auntie
Thank
Adeswa that
you
had
so
a
much.
question, but
Oh.
she can't unmute. I don't know if she's going to type it. Ireti, because of time, I know we'll probably have another conversation and a follow-up conversation, but we have to bring this to a close. So you have a couple of minutes with your closing remarks. And then I don't know if Pastor Sonny is here, but I would close. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Auntie. I understand, I hear you. And somebody wrote, apologizing is a sign of strength. That's not the kind of apology I'm talking about, right? I'm saying apologizing for women to conform or to be seen to be conforming to the rules. That's kind of apologize. Everything is contextual. That's number one. I'd like to talk about feminism at this point. Please, 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 honestly, so many people misunderstand feminism. Feminism is, for under its basic roots, in its simplest form, is about any woman being what she wants to be, whether it's a homemaker, whether it's a wife, do you understand? Whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, a trader, whatever. Feminism is about leaving women to be who and what they want to be. Feminism isn't about saying women shouldn't get married. Feminism is about saying you're going into that marriage because that's what you want to go into, not because society tells you that's what you should be doing. Feminism is saying you want to be mother and that's the job you want. It's your choice. Be that mother, be that homemaker, because that's the job you want to do. That is your way of contributing to society. Feminism is about challenging and breaking normative stereotypes, right? So it isn't, please, Wherever your daughter, you have a daughter or a son that says, you know, everybody talks about Chimamanda's from, good God, Chimamanda did not create feminism, Father Lord. I need to kill that. There are actually 4 different brands of feminism, and we're not going to be able to talk about it. In its political sort of shaping, whatever. So that's the one thing I would really like to correct. Want to be a wife, you want to be a mother, heck, whatever a woman wants to be. It's literally about whoever you want to be. That's number one. Number two is, somebody asked a question earlier about how do we, what's the practical ways of combating these norms and these issues to do with patriarchy and political space, and how do we get beyond it? They have to be disruptors. I came into this country, and I'll keep telling you and I'll keep saying again, I found too many conformists. Conformists do not shape the world. Scientists who discover the reason they broke the sound barrier to get to the moon is because they refused to accept that it would not be broken. Conformists do not shape the world. Only troublemakers do. Only disruptors do. You have to disrupt a structure in order for it to be reshaped, not fit into it, right? That's number two. The other thing I want to say, yes, I also want to talk about boys. Yes, of course, what we tell our boys is critically important, but we must stop blaming it on mothers. Every time we blame it on mothers, we move the responsibility from a father, whether it's a father that's at home or a father that's not at home. It's a joint responsibility to bring up your child. My son, I am mother to a son who is 22 this year. My greatest fear with my son was always, did I bring up a feminist? And even though his father and I separated when I moved to Nigeria, the one thing I dedicated every single breath of my body to was to ensure their relationship did not suffer, because I broke up and decided I must live in Nigeria. I took the opportunity. So yes, if we're talking about apology, I kept apologizing. I'm sorry I did this, I had to, I'm sorry, forgive me, so that he and his son would have that relationship. Because I wanted to bring up a feminist child, a feminist boy who is unafraid of his masculinity, who is unafraid of his vulnerability, who is unafraid of talking to adults and discuss and challenging adults and questioning them, and continues to actually seek learning. Because what patriarchy does and toxic masculinity does, it prevents vulnerability. And when you're not vulnerable, you don't seek knowledge. Gosh, the context of this is it's so important. So we're watching Black Girls Rock. Sis, you will know that. Remember, they used to do it in the USA a few years back. They used to do this show. It was a yearly award show called Black Girls Rock. My son was still in Nigeria at the time. So I called him down, baby, come and watch this with me. Black Girls Rock. So at the end, he said to me, Mom, why does Black Girls rock? What about Black boys? Why is it only Black girls? Do you know, that was one of the greatest questions my son ever asked me. One of the most memorable times for me as a mother, because that was an opportunity to trade, opportunity to educate and discuss. And I had to explain to him that, baby, you know what the thing is? Black boys have always rocked. But everybody forgot that Black girls also rock too. So we are having to remind them. I am proud to say today I brought up a feminist child. I still question myself how I do it, how I did it. But it came from conversation. It came from me reaffirming him as a man, which he did with his father, right? But also with his mother. I didn't emasculate him. Yes, right? And I allowed him to be comfortable the way my mother brought me up, as to whoever you want to be, right down to religion. I don't care what religion you are. We only have one religion, God, in my family. So if you want to go the Christian way, If you want to go the Muslim way, heck. If you want to go the traditional way, pick it. God. God is the God and the goodness inside of every single one of us. And if we worship God, that's the goodness inside every single one of us. Imagine the sort of children we would create and the society we would have. So my son is fasting for 15 days, not because he's Muslim. He's tried that before. He said, Mom, I can't cook. But because he felt it was his way of saying thanks to God for the things that God has done in his life since his father died. I didn't tell him that. He called me to tell me that. So we have to reaffirm and reinforce the goodness of every single child that we have. It's about that reinforcement that gives them the confidence and creates a space for them to question us. Because then there's bi-directional learning. That's where I would think.
Thank you. This has been great. Time well spent. And as we had said earlier on, is a conversation that is going to continue around the kitchen table. It's going to continue in our own private homes. And it's a gospel that we need to preach about inclusion. And I'm going to read a statement that we had. Pastor Sonny and I were going back and forth about making sure that this message is going out there and we're understanding what we're trying to address. So I'll just read it out. Patriarchy as a social and political structure has deeply influenced governance and leadership in Nigeria. While it has shaped historical power dynamics, it has also led to significant disparities in gender representation and success to opportunities. A balanced approach does not diminish these realities, but rather seeks to understand them within the broader political and social economic context. The goal is not to divide, but to identify ways to build a fairer system where merit, competence, and inclusivity guides leadership. A nation thrives when all its citizens, regardless of gender, are empowered to contribute meaningfully. Evidence from around the world shows that societies that embrace gender balance in leadership benefit from better governance, economic growth, social stability, and nation building. We've heard that when women are marginalized groups that have and can't take a seat at the table, national policies will lose opportunities to have national policies that are holistic and address diverse social needs. So while in Nigeria, while we're on this course of building our nation, yes, you said we have retrogressed. Some progress has been made, but there remains a significant gap in women's representation in political offices, boardrooms, and leadership spaces. Addressing this gap is not just about fairness, it's about harnessing the full potential of our population for national development. So as we continue to move forward together, we are asking for collaboration over conflict, fostering a political culture that values inclusivity, transparency, and accountability. We all must take a crucial step towards building a Nigeria that serves all its people, not just a select few. So that is our statement, and that is our way of closing and thanking everyone for joining us again today. It's like I said, it's continuous. It's the movement for change based on what we have said. So we invite you to join us again next week, same time, same Zoom link. And we have removed the passcode, so it's easier for you to click and then just join us. And then we'll send, for those of you that are interested in Purple Women, we'll send out the information to you as well. And thank you. Again, apologies that our principal had to be away. He's attending a waykeeping service. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We're glad you could join us. We did put a link in the chat room if you're interested in learning more about ALG, the Africa Leadership Group, and what we do in terms of nation building, and collaboration with other organizations on the way forward, please go ahead and fill that link, and we'll have your information and we'll keep you posted. But if you don't get the flyer, it's the same Zoom link, 5 p.m. West African time. Thank you all so much. Good to have you here. And darling sis, so good to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Always a wonderful time with you. And I know Auntie will have that family meeting where we can discuss some other issues.
Yes, so
thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for
Have
having
a
me.
good evening, everyone. God bless you.
God bless you all.
Always
Bye-bye.
remember to play for Nigeria.
Exactly.
Yes, so
yes.
please post that message for